Ladies and gents, boys and girls, what is up? Sunday, July the 16th, 2023. We're at SEC Media Days, Nashville, Tennessee. Hope you're all doing well here on this Sunday night. Very excited to chat with each and every single one of you. I see my good friend Austin Gregory checking in from New Ellington, South Carolina. Shout out to New Ellington, Austin. The last time I heard of New Ellington, South Carolina, I think I was like in middle school playing in a golf tournament at New Ellington Golf Club, which I think isn't even there anymore. So again, my friend, hope you're doing well. Also, those Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel, the TDC Questions channel, to be sure your questions are answered there. Now, I'll say this, right? Because the schedule this week is crazy. The crowd is probably going to be a mixed bag. Some folks that are able to tune in normally noon to 3. And I know that we're calling the audible this week. So if you're hearing the sound of my voice and you are, you aren't getting to hear us for some reason, getting to tune in, obviously, thank you for rolling with the punches, first off. But we're at SEC Media Days, man. Nashville, Tennessee. I'm so excited to be here, so fired up, so excited for a fantastic week. But obviously, with all the festivities, coaches speaking, players speaking, us being over at the hotel, taking everything in. They got media receptions, all kinds of events going on. Operating TDC noon to 3 was just not a realistic option this week. So instead, in case you missed it, this is going to be the schedule, and this schedule is tentative. It is subject to change. Things can change because I'm just not exactly sure how long we're going to go the next couple of nights, but right now, this is the schedule. Obviously, right now, guys, we are live. It is 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern time. We do have a full packed first hour. In our second hour, we have my good friend, Mark Rogers, voice of college ball. He's going to drop in for 20 minutes or so, and then we're going to do a Q&A power hour, or at least attempt to do one. If there's really not a demand for it, I'm not going to sit here and just ramble for an hour. We can take all the questions later in the week. The rest of this week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, the plan is to go live at 9 p.m. Central Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. Yes, that is very, very late. I understand it. But here is the way that I look at it, folks. The content must be made. The content needs to be made. And it doesn't matter what time it is, what have you. It's got to get done. So we will burn the midnight oil, TDC after dark, if you will. I'm excited to do that, by the way. Going to be a lot of fun. But I'm more than happy to do so. TDC after dark, whatever you want to label it. But the content must get made, which also I really like the idea of, recapping the day that was, talking about everything, my day at SEC Media Days. I want to get into that in just a second because, of course, we just got here today, just 2.5 hours or so ago. So, just roll with the punches. That's the best way I can tell you. What I can assure you and guarantee you is this. The podcast is going to drop every single day this week, at least for the first couple of days. I'll get there in a second, at 5 a.m. Eastern time, 5 a.m. Eastern. So my morning commuters, you're getting the podcast back at that normal 5 a.m. slot this week. Obviously, we've been dropping the show in the afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you're getting the podcast at 5 a.m. Eastern time, okay? No TDC on Thursday because that's going to be a travel day for us. We will return to the studio on Friday, noon to 3, as normal, Eastern time, of course. Noon to 3, podcast dropping 5 in the afternoon. And Friday, back in the studio, is when I'll give my full breakdown, everything that Coach Shane Beamer had to say, Spencer Rattler, Tonka Hemingway, Kai Kroger, and all of the Gamecocks in attendance. So, anyways, guys, that is the schedule for this week. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, what have you, just let me know. A quick update in my personal life, guys. I have become a sparkling water fanatic. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it says about me. Pinky's up for sure. But I love a sparkling water. I tell you that. I didn't know that about myself until about 2 months ago. Or really probably about a month ago. Sparkling water. I am a sparkling water guy now. Anyways, let's see. Brendan says, have a good show, Chris. Working at 5:30 morning shift all week. So I'll catch the VODs later. Yeah, hey, listen, I totally understand. Listen, those who, I'm not going to take it personally. Those who, normally tune in noon to 3 who cannot. Hey, that's why we're doing it, though, for the podcast. Catch the podcast. The podcasts are going to be out. I mean, of course, guys, I love doing the live show, TDC, of course, but one of the biggest reasons we do it, one of the biggest, the purpose of it, if you will, is not just for the live show entertainment side, but also the podcast side and getting the podcast out. And like I mentioned, I certainly was not going to come to Nashville for SEC Media Days and not release the podcast content. Either way, we've given you the schedule. Again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, what have you, please do not hesitate to reach out and let me know. My brother is tuned in. Again, we are in the Airbnb right now in Nashville, Tennessee. So excited, man. I'll start with that really quickly. Again, guys, we got a packed show. Mark Rogers, my friend, the voice of college football, he will join us at 8:15 Central, 9:15 Eastern, so stay tuned for that. We are going to do, again, a Q&A Power Hour in hour number 3 if we have the demand for it. So, hey, if you guys got something, get your questions out there. I will answer all questions until we run out of them. And in our first hour, really, really excited, guys. We're talking SEC Media Days preview a bit, previewing the entire week. Also, really exciting night because we begin our 2023 opponent preview series. You might recall we did these SEC team previews, right? Every team in the SEC, breaking them down. Even teams, of course, that South Carolina does not play. That's what we spent the last couple of weeks doing before our week-long hiatus, if you will. Now, we dive into teams actually on South Carolina's schedule. So you guys will all really have the opportunity to learn about the opponent. And of course, tonight, we're going in order. We start with the North Carolina Tar Heels. Andrew Jones of Tar Heel Illustrated, he joined me. The Rivals affiliate of UNC, really great stuff. We had a great conversation, guys. And all the combos that are lined up, they are fantastic conversations. I think they're combos you guys will enjoy, but also really value. Again, just learning and hearing from the opposing perspective ahead of the game this season. Also, guys, I do want to spend some time talking. Again, we just got to Nashville today, and Babes and Waves asked, are you going the whole time or just South Carolina's Day? My friend, I am most certainly going the whole time. I will be there every single day. I will be there, Babes and Waves, every single day. I did not come up here on Sunday for the Thursday event. I did not just do that to come one day. So I'm going to go out there every single day, man. It's going to be an absolute blast. Like I mentioned, guys, I mean, you can tell my blood's pumping right now. Here, I'll show you guys this really quickly because I feel like I posted a picture. I mentioned to people, but if I don't show you, you might not even believe me. Check this bad boy out. Look at that guy. Who would have ever thought if it wouldn't? There you go. Who would have ever thought? Who would have ever? Dude, I'll be totally honest with you, too. You guys know a couple weeks ago, obviously, we got the email. Hey, you're approved for credentials, what have you. You're getting credentials. Even today, though, waiting in line, I was sitting there like, what if they sent the email to the wrong guy? Like what if this is like a joke? You know what I mean? Like it was just. But it was a surreal experience, guys. We got into Nashville at 4:30 and went over to the Grand Hyatt Nashville Hotel, whatever. Beautiful hotel. The digs for this thing are incredible. I mean, absolutely insane. But, I've told you guys so many times that, credentials isn't necessarily a defining thing for us in the sense of this. I don't need this to affirm that what we're doing is special. I don't need this to validate me in any sort of way that what I'm doing and what we're doing is good enough. But as I told you before, I'd be lying to you if I said it didn't mean something. From the standpoint of, and I've already told this story, but the standpoint of it, I just remember sitting there, 2014, SEC Media Days is taking place. And I remember it so vividly. Sitting there thinking to myself, man, what I would give to be at that event. What I would give to be covering that event and be talking sports as a job for a living. And if you want even more proof, guys, I had my own blog back then. It's so funny. The folks on social media, when you do what I do, nothing's a secret, right? Your entire life is uncovered. I can't believe folks have not pulled up the old WordPress blog that I had. It was called a C Philly thing. That's all it was called, just a C Philly thing. But all I wrote about really was sports. But one of them was I wrote an article. This was just for me. I wrote an article about 2014 SEC Media Days. I just did that for myself. You know what I mean? I just did it for myself. And so call it manifestation. I do believe in that. Call it speaking it into existence. But it's a really, really cool thing. And I also think too, like when you start an entity from zero, if you would have told me 6 years ago, this time when sitting right now, 6 years ago, we probably had about 150 followers on Twitter, no Instagram, no Facebook. Had you told me that we would be at SEC Media Days, I don't know what I would have thought. You know what I mean? I just don't. I don't know what I would have thought. I certainly did not put limiting expectations, limiting beliefs on myself and TSUS and what we're capable of, but it's just something I don't know. You don't think about it. You don't. And to be in Nashville, to a beautiful city like this, and a place I'd never been till just now, it's awesome, man. It's really, really cool. I did see Babes and Waves ask that. No, we do not have a table because I was approved late. I was not able to get a table on Radio Row, but I'm actually kind of glad, Babes and Waves. I'm kind of glad because that would have been a lot at once. Now this year, it's my first time ever. I can kind of learn, see what others are doing, how their setup is. Like one thing I didn't even think about, these tablecloths that these guys have where they have like their logo on the front. Like I never thought about that because I've never needed it. So I'm glad, like, okay, next year I'll be prepared and I can get that and have that for the show, the business, whatever. So today's been really cool, man. It's awesome. It's also awesome that we get to go live, chat with you guys, conversate, do the show, everything else. And it's neat, man. It's just neat to be here. This is something that, again, I watched so many years ago on TV and thought to myself, how cool would it be to be covering that event at that event again? Well, I'm grateful to say that I've been covering the event full time since 2020, I guess you could say, because 2019, technically, I wasn't doing this full time until August of 2019. But, I've been doing this full time for a bit, but now to be able to be doing this full time and covering the event in person is a really, really neat thing. And I'm not going to try to pretend it's not. And again, while I don't need the validation from anyone, the external validation, if you will, to reassure that what we're doing is special and is good and we're making progress and we're doing great things. I don't need that validation. It's a really cool thing. So, Babes and Waves, I'm actually solo on this trip. Yeah. Steven, we be asking questions. Yes, the plan is to ask questions I'm going to try to ask questions to everybody that'll answer. So as much as I can ask questions, I'm going to do so. That being said, guys, we're on the topic of SEC Media Days. And like I mentioned, we got a packed show. Mark Rogers, our opponent preview. As we sit here on Sunday night, or if you're listening on podcast Monday morning, the biggest preseason event in college football, the unofficial kickoff, I should say, to the college football season begins tomorrow in Nashville, Tennessee. SEC Media Days gets underway. Now, talking season, what can we really learn during talking season? That's up for debate. But today I'm going to give you guys my top 5 things that I'm most hoping to learn at SEC Media Days. Again, how much can you really take away? Because talking season, as the HBC used to call it, it's just that. You don't win football games in July. You don't win football games right now. Nothing you say. I mean, there's not going to be a coach that steps up there to the podium most likely and says, you know what? We stink. This is terrible. Our roster's awful. We're not going to do very well. Each and every single one of these coaches, as you would expect, is going to step up there, sell their program, sell what they're doing well, speak highly of their team, maybe talk about some things they need to figure out, adversities to overcome. But can you draw hard conclusions from SEC Media Days? Probably not. But that's not going to stop us from talking about it either way. So again, guys, the top 5 things I'm most hoping to learn at this week's SEC Media Days. The first one, guys, for me is this, and it's the most, I feel like it's the most no-brainer thing and what everybody's waiting for. There's no questions about Georgia football on the field, right? I mean, the Dogs back-to-back national championships, look primed, in my opinion, to win a third. I mean, you guys have seen, I locked it in. I've got them going 12-0, 8-0 in the SEC, and winning the SEC title. I really believe that Georgia, just top to bottom, they are what Alabama, dare I say, used to be. I mean, Georgia is the creme de la creme when it comes to college football. They are loaded across the board. I mean, there's absolutely no reason that at minimum they should not be in Atlanta playing in the SEC title with a chance at the playoff on the line. So on the field, not a whole lot of question marks for Georgia. You got Mike Bobo. You got Carson Beck at quarterback. You're replacing 2 tackles. I get it. You're reloading some guys on defense. But Georgia is going to be just fine on the field. What I most want to learn from Kirby Smart is how does he plan on solving the culture issues at Georgia? And I'll say this. I think Kirby Smart's the type of coach, he's going to address it head on. I don't think he's going to let it linger. I don't think he's going to dance around or dodge the question, if you will. I think there is going to come a point, though, where Kirby Smart says, okay, guys, I've answered the question. I can't answer it any differently. Let's talk ball. Because, Kirby's going to want to do everything he can to talk football. But when you have the type of on-field issues that they have had, somebody died. Like this isn't just some small thing. 2 people died back in January. And it's crazy to think that's not enough to stop those players on that football team from speeding and racing and doing what they've done. Kirby Smart has mentioned he's done all he can do to not necessarily fix the culture, but fix the issue at hand. I loved what Jake Crane said about culture when he came on our show. When it comes to on-field, like winning games, culture in the locker room, guys, there's nothing wrong with that culture. That culture's fantastic. People love to throw the culture word around as the first thing. And I understand that includes off-field as well, but these off-field incidents aren't going to stop them from doing anything on the field, in my opinion. But it's more so just about his program as a whole. What are they doing? Does he have a plan in place? Does he say anything maybe we don't expect? There's got to be some sort of plan. There's got to be something they're doing to solve these issues. Because, again, it's not some small thing. 2 people died back in January. It's not a small thing. And it just keeps happening over and over and over. Also, by the way, on that note, does Kirby Smart say anything about the AJC? Does he say anything about the Atlanta Journal-Constitution? Because Georgia is obviously fighting back. Georgia is obviously, they feel some type of way about the AJC. What does Kirby have to say about the off-field stuff? Because everything on-field's fine. Off-field, there are some issues to take care of. Guys, I'm also hoping to learn moving to College Station. I have fallen in the trap once again. Texas A&M. Every year I pick them to win 9 or 10 games. Every year I get burned. And every year I tell myself, I'm not going to do it again. Well, I'm back. You reeled me back in, Texas A&M, because I got the Aggies going 9-3 and beating Alabama. Here's what I want to know, though. Jimbo Fisher, Bobby Petrino, can it work in College Station? I want to hear him talk about that. I want to hear him talk about the dynamic of those 2 guys. That coaching staff, by the way, it's crazy. You got Petrino, you got DJ Durkin, you got some dudes with some dirty laundry on that coaching staff. But I want to hear Jimbo just talk about the relationship and how that dynamic's going to work. Because you talk about, guys, putting down egos, setting egos aside. It's much, much easier said than done when you have these head coaches that, especially a guy like Jimbo, he's had his hands all over it. He's been the one in control. And I think he obviously realized if he did not release the reins, going more into a CEO type role, that his tenure in College Station might not last a whole lot longer. But it's a fascinating hiring. It's a fascinating pickup, especially when you think about Bobby Petrino, Arkansas, his experience there. Need I say more? We've all seen the picture of the neck brace. Need I say more? Can it work? I mean, just flat out, can it work? And, it's something, again, guys, like many of these, we're not going to know until the season comes and we see it on field. But what does he have to say about it? I want to hear from Jimbo Fisher how they're expecting the Bobby Petrino experiment to work in College Station, how they're expecting it to lead to the growth of Connor Wegman at quarterback, and how they're expecting it to help them revitalize their team, their program, and bounce back from a disastrous 5-7 season a season ago. Nick Saban is always a topic of conversation. I just feel like I could not do what you're talking about SEC Media Days, what I want to learn. It felt wrong to leave Nick Saban and Alabama off this list. Number one, guys, I'm just going to say what it is. I can't wait to hear Nick Saban speak and to be in the same room as Nick Saban. And I don't say that as like a fanboy of any kind, but this man is a legend. Like, when you say legend, when it comes, this is the greatest college football coach of all time, ever. And when Nick Saban speaks, people listen. When Nick Saban speaks, people listen. He is at times it feels like the czar of college football. I simply just want to know and like to learn who has the lead in the Alabama quarterback competition heading into fall camp. Because, hey, I picked Bama to go 9-3, guys. I don't shy away from it. A lot of that has to do with the quarterback position. I've got Texas beating Alabama early in the season. And I think Texas could beat them handily. Who's your quarterback? Is it Jalen Milroe? Is it Buckner from Notre Dame? Is it Ty Simpson? Do we have any idea? Do we get even a clue of who's leading that quarterback competition going into fall camp or going into the season or what have you? Admittedly, guys, over the last couple of months, I've started to dive more into SEC content, these other SEC teams, more than I ever have before. But it's funny to me, like, talking to Bama people. I mean, our good friend Chris Marler, obviously, the show, and I've talked to others, and, like, I understand doubt Nick Saban at your own risk. But, like, when you look at Alabama on paper and look at LSU on paper, like, when you look at Bama, though, I think what people have a really hard time grasping is this. How is that 10-2 Alabama team going to get better after losing Bryce Young and Will Anderson? How are they going to get better? How is this team with more question marks going to be better? And maybe Nick Saban does it again. Maybe Nick Saban will do it again. But I need to hear some answers, something. And I'm sure that Nick Saban won't give us any. But I wonder, does he indicate in any type of way something, read between the lines, of who maybe has the lead in that quarterback competition? To Columbia, South Carolina, guys, something else I'm hoping to learn. Of course, I got to include the Gamecocks in this list. We've talked about it a lot over the last couple of weeks. I have beaten in line of scrimmage and running game into you all's heads more than you'd probably like. We've been talking offensive line and running back and defensive line, it feels like, every single day. But that's what I want to hear from Shane Beamer. And that's what I want to learn. What has Shane Beamer done to address South Carolina's rushing game woes? Because we can talk about Spencer Rattler. We can talk about Juice Wells. We can talk about Nick Eamon-Warry. We can talk about all the skill position to Carryon Joyner. We can talk about all the skill position guys you want. But until South Carolina can figure it out in the trenches, until they can figure out how to run the football, stop the run, until South Carolina can figure out how to not be 10th or worse or 100th or worse nationally in both rush offense and rush defense, what are we talking about? We're wasting our breath because South Carolina is not going to they're not going to come out of that middle of the pack. They're not going to do it. Spencer Rattler's not going to realize his full potential. Juice Wells won't realize his full potential. And from the defensive side, if you can't stop the run, that defense and in turn this football team won't realize its full potential. What are they doing to stop the run? What's happening? We see it in recruiting. I just want to hear Shane Beamer address it. That's it. I want to hear him address it. What is South Carolina football doing in the meantime until these guys get on campus to stop the run? 11th or worse in the SEC in rush defense 5 consecutive seasons. Outside the top 100 in rushing offense and the running game, major question mark this year, as is the rush defense as well. Last year, Shane Beamer touted the Gamecocks defensive tackles as the strongest position group on the football team. And that was a position group that played a part in South Carolina finishing 13th in rush defense and 116th in rush defense nationally. So I want to hear from Coach Beamer. I want to hear from Shane Beamer. What are y'all doing to stop the run? Is there something schematically? Is it truly just lack of bodies? How about the running back position? Do you feel like you have answers there? I mean, I'm sure Shane Beamer will be asked about the running back position. And then the offensive line, do you feel like these transfer portal guys, do you think they're the answer? Line of scrimmage is what's holding South Carolina back. I want to hear Coach Beamer talk about it and face it head on. Finally, guys, what I'm most hoping to learn at this week's SEC Media Days. I mentioned South Carolina as a middle-of-the-pack SEC team. What I'd like to most learn is this, and again, I don't know that this is something – I don't know if this is something that we can necessarily draw hard conclusions and learn from the event, but we could almost play a game of stock up, stock down next week. And my question is, which middle-of-the-pack SEC team is most on the rise and ready to ascend to the upper echelon of the conference? And when I say upper echelon, I mean with the likes of Georgia, Alabama, LSU. Because the question we've heard all offseason, who's the fourth best team in the SEC? Because after Georgia, Bama, LSU, take your pick. Is it Tennessee? Is it Texas A&M? Is it South Carolina? Is it Kentucky? Is it Arkansas? Is it Auburn? Take your pick. There's so many. I mean, that's the SEC. You've got Georgia, Alabama, LSU at the top. At the bottom, you've got really Vanderbilt. And outside of that, guys, you've got about 10 teams in this conference who can beat anybody on any given Saturday and lose to anybody on any given Saturday. And what I think is so fascinating is, for the most part, it seems, so many fan bases, so many of these schools, so many of these programs, they feel like their team's on the ascent. They feel like we're the ones trending up. Are you actually, though? Are you actually, though? Who is? Who is? Who's stock up? Who's stock down? Are we able to leave the event and say, I feel better about this team going into the season? I feel worse about this team going into the season. Maybe that's a tough conclusion to draw, but I think that's a question at SEC Media Days and something to be a question all season long as well. Like, which of the middle-of-the-pack SEC teams is here to stay and is going to continue to ascend, and which ones did maybe we get out ahead of our skis a little bit and they've still got a ways to go, or they even take a step back? So again, guys, the top 5 things I'm most hoping to learn at SEC Media Days this week. Number 1, how does Kirby Smart plan on solving culture issues at Georgia? Number 2, can the Jimbo and Bobby Petrino experiment work in College Station? Number 3, who has the lead in the Alabama quarterback competition heading into fall camp? Number 4, what has Shane Beamer done to address South Carolina's rushing game woes? And number 5, which middle-of-the-pack SEC team is most on the rise and ready to ascend to the upper echelon of the conference? Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, we're going to keep the conversation rolling here on this Sunday night. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Macho Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Sunday night, July the 16th, 2023, as we sit in Nashville, Tennessee for SEC Media Days. Absolutely thrilled to be here, guys. Really, really excited for the week to come. That's the only thing about that sparkling water. Makes you burp. Anyways, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much again. Really, really excited for the week to come in Nashville, Tennessee. Starting tomorrow, Greg Sankey will speak at, I believe, 10:30 Central? I have to check the schedule. I've actually got it right here. Let's see. What time will Sankey speak? Okay, Greg Sankey is speaking in the main media room, 11:35. 11:35 tomorrow, which will be 12:35 Eastern, because these times are all Central Time. So, anyways, guys, appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much. Like I mentioned, the 2023 Opponent Preview Series officially begins tonight. Tonight, of course, we're talking North Carolina Tar Heels. Tomorrow, we'll do Furman. Tuesday, we'll do Georgia. Wednesday, Mississippi State. And then Friday, we'll do Tennessee. And the next week, of course, continue. But, guys, going to be a lot of fun. Again, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. We got Mark Rogers upcoming in our second hour. We got our Q&A Power Hour in the third hour. But for now, we talk the North Carolina Tar Heels, the Gamecocks week 1 opponent, with Andrew Jones of Tar Heel Illustrated. Enjoy this conversation, and we'll talk to y'all soon. As we begin our 2023 Opponent Preview Series, we look to Charlotte, North Carolina, and the season opener against the North Carolina Tar Heels of the ACC. And who better to help us break them down than Andrew Jones of Tar Heel Illustrated as he joins the show. Andrew, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. It is a pleasure to have you on. So excited to chat.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. And I'm very excited about college football season. It's going to be here quickly, and in some ways it can't get here quick enough.
Aren't we all? AJ, like we were talking about off air, man, SEC Media Days about to begin, ACC Media Days in 2 weeks, and then, of course, the countdown to kickoff. It's already been on, but it gets real serious in just a couple of weeks. These teams will hit the field for fall camp. Let's look at North Carolina specifically. And before we look at this year's team, let's look back at last year. A team that went 9-5, 6-2 in the ACC. They lost the Holiday Bowl to Oregon. But I think what most fans took away, or a lot of fans took away, is that 4-game losing streak to end the 2022 season. It's also a season in which you have a player, your quarterback, Drake May, named the ACC Player of the Year. Just talk about the season that was for North Carolina in 2022, because obviously it was one that started with a ton of promise, and they won a lot of close games early, but faltered down the stretch. How do you view 2022 for UNC?
Well, I think there's a way you can look at it, a couple of ways you can look at it. Number one, when they built the 9-1 start, they did it by finding ways to win close games, which was an indication that as we got deeper into the season, that they didn't have a lot of room for error. So they were winning some games because they made fewer mistakes, or some of the mistakes they made weren't as costly. They scored touchdowns every once in a while on drives in which they would allow sacks, and they did allow a lot of sacks a lot late in the season. That issue became a bigger problem as the season went on. But they were just able to get by. And there were some teams that they barely beat that weren't very good. They barely beat Georgia State. They barely beat Virginia. Virginia's offense was anemic, and they were fairly productive against Carolina, at least from a point scoring standpoint. So I don't think it was a 9-1 club that had people saying, wow, what a team. I think the wow factor was that they were resilient. They had very good leadership on the roster, and they were finding ways to win. Plus, the wow factor was they had Drake May and usually Josh Downs when he was healthy, and that was a lethal combination. And Drake is so good that he was able to do enough to get them into the winner's circle in 9 of those 10 games. The last 4 games, Mac Brown will tell you that after they beat Wake Forest on the road in a really good game to clinch the Coastal Division, they're 9-1, that the team kind of little human nature seeped in. They took foot off the pedal a little bit. Georgia Tech took advantage. It was a freak game where Josh Downs drops a touchdown pass in the end zone late. If he catches the ball, they win the game. But again, very little room for error, right? So maybe a drop earlier in the season would have led to a loss earlier in the season. And then the NC State game, they were just physically beaten. They had chances to win. They missed a couple field goals in that game, including an overtime that would have given them a win. Clemson just outclassed them. Mac will tell you that the game was a lot more even at the line of scrimmage than what the score says. And I think there were elements that might be a little bit true, but Clemson was simply a better football team, and it showed. And then the Oregon game, I thought North Carolina played pretty well in a lot of areas, but again, a missed field goal late cost them. Missed field goals cost them 2 of those games, a drop touchdown pass by an NFL guy in another game. So that to me reflects what I said about the 9-1 start. They had very little room for error. They couldn't overcome missing a couple field goals against a good team like NC State. They couldn't overcome dropping a touchdown pass against a bad team like Georgia Tech at home. And I think 9-5 ultimately was what they were. They just happened to bunch the wins up, and then they happened to bunch the losses up.
Now, AJ, you mentioned Mac Brown coming into his 5th year in his second stint, of course, as we all know, at North Carolina. This is his 15th year overall coaching at UNC. What would you say is the overall vibe or the feeling around Mac Brown? Obviously, I think we all understand he's on the back 9 of his coaching career. Again, the overall feelings around the UNC head coach going into his 5th year. How much longer do you think he has in Chapel Hill?
Well, I think he's going to coach for a while as long as his health allows him to. And he's lost 35 pounds this offseason. So he's taking that very seriously. In fact, we did a podcast we ran earlier today on his weight loss because part of it is accountability in the program. He says, how can I tell these kids that they have to follow this regimen and they have to run, they have to be in shape, and here I am out of shape like this. So I like that. I think that's a good thing. And it shows you how adaptable at 71 Mac Brown still is. That's one of the reasons he survived as a successful head coach for so long. But I'll answer your question about the vibe in three ways. The fans are either pessimistic or they're casually optimistic. They are focused on that last 4 games. They're uber focused on that. And I like to look at more of the big picture, like I just outlined. So I don't sense tremendous enthusiasm going into the season because there's sort of an expectation among North Carolina fans. Every time we get built up, we never reach that point. And I get that because they haven't. The program has bumped its head on the ceiling numerous different decades over the course of time, and they could never poke through. They're good enough to almost be there, but they could never break through. And I think the fans sort of have that beaten syndrome in some respects. Now, the media, since we're closer and have a little bit better idea on things, I think that there's more, there's a higher projection for what this team could achieve from the media, in part because Drake May is the real deal. And I think that the new offense that they're going to run under Chip Lindsey, it's not a significant departure from what they did under Phil Longo, but it's going to be a little bit more run-oriented. Drake's going to take fewer hits. So I actually think it plays into the talent base. A spread the ball around approach actually it will work for this team. And the offense, which actually wasn't as good as people thought a year ago, it was stagnant at times. It struggled at times. It sputtered, and it wasn't a constant machine like it was in 2020 when Sam Howell led them to the Orange Bowl. It wasn't that good. I think they expect it to be comparable to what it was in 2020 this year, a lot of people in the media. Then there's the program. There is tremendous optimism in the Keenan Football Center. And I get this with off-the-record conversations with noteworthy people in that building. They think they have a very good team. They think that the kids they brought in the portal are absolute fixes for some of the problems that they had. They brought in 2 analysts in the offseason, Clyde Christensen, whom everybody who follows football knows. He was coaching Tom Brady a year ago. Now he's working in that room with Drake May and Chip Lindsey. And then you have Ted Monachino, who is a pass rush specialist who was with the Falcons and has coached a lot of NFL All-Pros. he was brought in because they haven't generated a pass rush. They have not been able to do that. Last year they gave up 40 sacks and they registered 19. So they also brought in a new offensive line coach. He's a guy that was at Baylor for a long time. They had great offensive lines. So they were trying to fix a lot of these things that have consistently been an issue over the last few years. And I think that they've made a lot of progress in those areas. They think they've made a ton of progress. So there are three different viewpoints there. The staff believes that they can have a very, very good football team and do some significant things this year. The fans are like, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Us in the middle, I'm like, yeah, it can happen. But I'm also a little bit of the I'll believe it when I can see it, because I've covered this program in various forms for a long time, and rarely have they exceeded expectations.
Now, AJ, you mentioned the offense, and that's really where it starts for UNC, right? The new OC, Chip Lindsey, takes over the departed Phil Longo. You get your quarterback back, Drake May, one of college football's top quarterbacks, and like I mentioned earlier, the 2022 ACC Player of the Year. He loses his top two targets at wide receiver, but you do add Nate McCullum from Georgia Tech and Tez Walker of Kent State to boost the receiving corps out of the transfer portal. Kamari Morales leads a talented tight end group that I know UNC feels really good about. And then Elijah Green leads a stable of backs that, from every preseason magazine I've seen, they say it's the deepest position group on the football team. And obviously one of the focuses, like you mentioned, they're looking to become just more physical at the point of attack. That includes the offensive rushing attack. 3 of 5 starters back up front, but there's a lot of experience in the offensive line group as well. So when you look at UNC's offense, overall outlook, you expect them, it sounds like, to look the same as they did under Longo, and it sounds like they should be able to hit the ground running and just sort of pick up where they left off last year.
I think they will, because they're very talented up front, and they've got some guys who can rack up numbers. I love the two receivers that came in. Nate McCullum had 60 receptions in 11 games at Georgia Tech last year, playing with 3 different starting quarterbacks, none of whom are going to be on anybody's watch list for anything this year. So that says, that says something about him. Tez Walker, Georgia fans can attest to how good Tez Walker is. He had a huge game in Athens. I think scored the only first half touchdown against that defense in the month of September last year. So he's a really talented player. He's an NFL potential guy. The running back situation, it's a deep room, but it's not settled at all. And that's an issue. You've got to be settled at running back, especially when you're going to run as much as they want to run this year, because you have to build that as you go through the season. You don't want to have 5 different guys running the ball. And right now they've got 5 guys. They're deep enough that they moved DJ Jones, and a veteran, but not super experienced. They moved him to the secondary. So they need to find 2 guys to step up and be those guys. Elijah Green was the 5th dude this time a year ago, but because of injuries, he ended up getting the job and played well enough that I think he still has it right now. But Omarion Hampton, as a true sophomore, was a big-time recruit. I think he's going to be in the mix. And George Pettaway was rated about the same, a top 100, top 110 kid, who's going to have an opportunity because they're going to throw to the backs more out of the backfield. I think that's something that he can do. But the running backs need to get settled. If they're not settled, I don't think the offense is going to be as potent as it should be. They have to get that taken care of. And as far as the offensive line goes, let's remember, they have a lot of experience, but they've allowed 89 sacks the last 2 years. So some of these guys have allowed a lot of sacks. So experience is great, but experience that it performs is a lot better. And I think the jury is out big time on the offensive line because of those ugly numbers. They also haven't run the ball well in short yardage situations, which is why they constantly talk about non-negotiables as far as physicality and all those things go. So they have a lot of proving to do in the essentials of running the ball conventionally, running in short yard situations, and protecting the quarterback. If they're pretty good and not great at those 3 things, then they'll be a very prolific offense, because they're going to hit on big strikes. May will find you if you're open. He doesn't throw many bad passes. And they've got a trio of tight ends that are as good as anybody in the country. A couple of them will play in the NFL, including Bryce Nesbitt, who's been on a lot of those early season tight end watch lists for the NFL draft next year. So I think they'll score a lot of points, but I don't believe the offense is going to lose them games. When they lose games, it's going to be the other side of the ball for sure.
AJ, real quick before we move to defense, people love to point at the last 4 games of last year and say, look at how Drake May played. I want to hear it from you. Just how good is Drake May? Because everybody's talking about this dude is like, could be the number one pick at quarterback. I mean, again, player of the year last year, but just how good is Drake May?
Yeah, the last 4 games, a lot of people have time in the offseason to nitpick, and they are picking on those last 4 games. And I'm not going to make excuses because I've got no dog in the fight here. I cover the program. I don't root for him or anything like that. But I do know that the offensive coordinator, Phil Longo, is very good friends with Luke Fickell. And when it became apparent that Fickell was going to leave Cincinnati and go to Wisconsin, there were some conversations that took place. And there are people that are very close to the situation, I won't name names, that believe that Longo kind of took his foot off the pedal as well. He kind of had one foot out the door, and maybe the planning wasn't as good. Maybe the communication with Drake wasn't as good. And I do think late in the year, they went to Josh Downs too much. They were a little bit too predictable. And Drake was running too much and took a lot of hits, and I think that had an effect on him. So the plan this year under Chip Lindsey is to minimize the hits on Drake, throw the ball around, spread it around to different people. And one of the things that he's added is a couple of drops. So instead of just getting the snap and looking and throwing, there are some drops that are being incorporated, some more traditional drops, which will actually help him prepare for the NFL. And that might change some of the routes that they run. That might change the way he sees some coverages. And so the expectation is that he's going to have a top pick in the draft type of season. And Max said that when a bunch of NFL scouts came in for pro day, a lot of them told him that he would have been the number one pick this year if he was eligible. They just love him. He's got so much upside. He's a football version of a gym rat. He's a lot of things Sam Howell was, but he's more talented. He's got a better everything across the board than Sam Howell, which is why Sam may have dropped some, and which is why Drake likely won't drop some. So I think he's the real deal. I think he's the best quarterback they've ever had, but not like they put a lot of guys in the NFL in the past. So I expect a big year from him. I expect him to be in the Heisman conversation as long as the defense is decent and they win a lot of games, which will ultimately be the determining factor on how the nation views him.
Now, AJ, as you mentioned, we're nitpicking when it comes to Drake May because it wasn't Drake May that gave them problems last year. It was the defensive side of the football. Last in the ACC in points allowed and yards allowed a season ago. When you look at who's coming back this year, Dedrick Gray and Power Eccles lead the defense from the linebacker position. 4 starters return up front. But as you mentioned, and I think too, experience is very overvalued in college football, like when it's not good experience, because you get 4 starters back, but that's from a group that ranked 128th in sacks and 129th in tackles for loss. So not a lot of production. 6 players in the defensive back group into the transfer portal over this offseason. Armani Chapman from Virginia Tech and Elijah Huzzle from ETSU are added via the portal. So obviously they've kind of revamped that position. And DeAndre Boykins returns as the lone starter from last season in the secondary at the nickelback spot. So I'll ask you this, AJ, when you look at the Tar Heels defense, again, I don't think it's a secret you're expecting the offense will be the strength of the football team. Can they improve on what they did a season ago? And I guess the question I should be asking, can they be any worse?
Well, I will say this, and after it happened, after the Appalachian State game, and Mac's Monday presser, he's like, well, our stats are screwed up for the rest of the year. So they were, because that was a god-awful performance. They gave up 6 touchdowns and 40 points in the fourth quarter to a Sun Belt Conference team, a game that they had firmly in hand. And they had to, and Carolina, without a onside kick return for a touchdown by Bryson Nesbitt, maybe they don't even win that game, a game that they led by 20 going into the fourth quarter. So that skewed the numbers a little bit, but they were bad. They didn't get stops usually when they had to. They got a little bit better late. And what's interesting is some of those guys that left weren't playing late. And they ushered most of those guys out of the program. We're in an everything is fair now period in college football, where maybe 8 years ago running kids out was a pretty gross thing to do. But now in NIL and portal era, they can leave at any time they want. Coaches feel a little bit more comfortable just kind of nudging kids out, saying, you're not going to play here. This kid's going to play over you, and it's a way to get kids to move on. I think that happened in some respects at Carolina. And I do think they got better through the portal on defense. Elijah Huzzle was a fantastic player at East Tennessee State. I know it's FCS, but he had 6 interceptions in each of the last 2 years. And tracking the ball and getting the ball is something that if you do at that level, you can do at a lot of levels. The cornerbacks at North Carolina in the 4 years since Matt came back combined for 8 interceptions. This kid had 12 in the last 2 years. So that's one of the reasons they brought him in. Get the ball, flip the field. If your defense can't stop people on third down and can't keep them from the end zone, one way to make up for some of that is to get some turnovers. And that could work to your advantage. If you're not going to, you're going to have a high missed tackle percentage and you're not going to get TFLs, you're not going to get sacks. If you can get a pick every once in a while, especially in a back and forth type game, give your offense more possession, so to speak, then you have a much better chance at winning games. I do think that at middle linebacker with Gray and Eccles, they have a chance to be really good. Gray could be a first-round pick. He would have been a second or third round last year. They're pretty strong at the jack position with Amari Gaynor. He came in from Florida State, and Kamen Rucker, who's an undersized kid who will play in the NFL because his position is going to be football player when he gets to a camp somewhere. Up front, they have a lot of talent. They've recruited very well there, but they haven't developed. There's a meanness issue, a violence issue that has been addressed. In fact, Gene Chizik during spring practice, he used the word violent every time we talked to him. I had never heard a coach talk about violence so much to the media, but that's what they're stressing. Violence, short area quickness, and stay in your gap, stay in your responsibility. If you don't trust your teammate and you leave your assignment to try to help him, instead of one guy being out of place, 2 are out of place. And that's been a problem for them. So they have to trust one another. They have to have great gap discipline, and they have to be more violent. They have to be quicker off the ball and be more violent. I think the jury is out whether or not that they have made that improvement. I wrote a piece the other day saying that they have because they're telling me they have. I don't know because I haven't seen them. They believe they made a lot of progress in those areas. And I think that's the key to this team. If they have made significant progress in those areas, they have a chance to have a really good season. If they haven't made any or much progress, then I think that they're going to be looking at like an 8-4 type year where if they go up against a more physical team like South Carolina, they'll find a way to lose late. I think that's what that's the beat on this team. That's the book on them. It's got to be up front. They have to be a lot better. Otherwise, not a whole lot will change.
Now, AJ, something that will be a factor most likely in week 1, because it's South Carolina football we're talking about, special teams. And I want to talk UNC special teams. They punter Ben Kiernan returns. He led the ACC at 46.8 yards per punt a season ago. There is a competition at place kicker between Noah Burnett and Cincinnati transfer Ryan Coe. And George Pettaway handles the kickoff return duties in North Carolina in the punt game, was second in the ACC in 2022 in punt returns. Anything stand out to you when it comes to special teams? And I'm sure it's something that UNC, I would imagine, if not now, come game week, will put extra emphasis on, because when you take on the Gamecocks and Beamer ball, Pete Limbo, one of the best in the country, that's an area that you better make sure you're prepared. If not, they'll win that facet and most likely win the game.
Yeah, you got Pete Limbo and the Beamer connection there, no doubt about it. There is an emphasis put on special teams, and I hate the way that they approach it is you don't have to win a game because of special teams, but man, you better not lose a game because of special teams. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the way that they approach this. I think that an area that has changed a lot with the portal and having to play a lot of young players that is a concern to Mac and staff is that they're very young on special teams, and they don't want to be young on special teams. There was a time when most freshmen didn't play, and a lot of veterans and starters would be on special teams, and coaches would say, look, if you want to play in the NFL, unless you're a star, you better also be able to play on special teams. I know that they still talk about that. They still like to do that, but they also want to be able to give guys some rest at times. Now, they say that you got to be a starter to be on special teams. I'm not so sure that that's the case anymore because of how young the team is, and you don't want your linebacker like Cedric Gray, who played 1,000 snaps last year. You don't want him playing another 7 or 8 a game with full speed special team stuff. So you want to pull him from those things. I don't know. I think it's an open-ended question that we're going to find out over time. Ryan Coe will be the kicker. I don't think they brought him in with the personality he has to not be the guy. He's got a strong leg. He's pretty successful at Cincinnati, but he missed a kick in the spring game. And he came in because Burnett missed those kicks against NC State and Oregon. And they didn't get a tremendous number of touchbacks on kickoffs after. They actually lost their kickoff specialist after the Notre Dame game. He hit the portal. And he was getting touchbacks at about 78, 80% of the time. Ryan Coe has a higher percentage of touchbacks as well. So they don't want people returning the ball. They want everybody starting at the 25. And if you're going to be really young on your kickoff team, have a dude that kicks the ball into the end zone. And so those guys don't have to worry. Well, they have to worry, but they don't have. You have to rely on them always fill in their lanes, always maintain their responsibilities, and then being able to make plays. If you're having touchbacks, you don't have to worry as much about that. So I think it'll be Coe. Kiernan's pretty good. The return game used to be really good back in the day. I think right now they just want to make sure they don't turn the ball over and hand the thing over to Drake May and let him do his thing.
AJ, UNC returns 13 starters, 6 on the offense, 7 on the defense. Again, like you mentioned earlier, and I just want to point this out, winning close games will yet again be a huge point of emphasis for North Carolina. They were 4-0 in games decided by 3 points or fewer through the first 10 games. They were 0-3 in those games in their 4-game skid to close the season. So like you mentioned, just razor-thin margin for error. And as you look at this 2023 season, of course, opening up with that game against South Carolina in Charlotte. We'll get into it in just a second. You got Appalachian State in a rematch week 2, which will be a lot of fun. Minnesota in the non-conference as well at Pittsburgh. You then get your bye week before you take on Syracuse. You get Miami, Virginia, at Georgia Tech, Campbell, Duke, at Clemson, and at NC State to close out the season. So your thoughts, AJ, on the 2023 schedule and the way it shakes out for UNC this year?
Well, I'm a guy, as a journalist, I want information. I want all the intel I can get. And I think when you jump into a season with the first 4 games that they have before the break, we're going to learn a lot. Mm-hmm. If they're not going to have a big season, we'll know when they come back from Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. So when I'm down there talking to the players at Heinz Field or wherever they call that place now, after the Pittsburgh game, I'm either asking them about, okay, you got an open date coming up. You guys have a chance to have a special season, something along those lines, or what needs fixing. Because they're going to learn an awful lot about themselves, because App State's a quality team. Minnesota's a solid team. And going to Pitt is not – they're physical. They do a lot of the things that gives Carolina trouble. I know Carolina beat them last year, and they've done pretty well against Pitt over the years. But the way Pitt is developing its program, they're getting more physical, and they're a better program than they were 5 years ago. So I think they're a more difficult opponent for Carolina. So we'll know everything we need to know about them. And then they have this long stretch after Pittsburgh where they have one home game between September 24th, or excuse me, one road game between September 24th and when they go to Clemson.
Yeah,
I believe that's the third week.
The only road game in that stretch is at Georgia Tech, October the 28th. Yeah. The only other one, or of course, you close out the season. November 18th is the game. So
So that's almost 2 months with one road game. So if they're 4-0, for the sake of discussion, or even 3-1, but 4-0, they have an opportunity to really make that Clemson game incredibly important. And that would be kind of fun, because I'd love to see what this program can do in a situation like that. I think that would be more interesting than the same old, right? So that middle part of the schedule is a period in which they have a chance to fatten up. Everybody says, oh, look out for Miami. Well, that's another I'll believe it when I see it program. Virginia has issues. Syracuse, I don't think, is very good. Look at how they closed last year. Campbell. Georgia Tech, I think, they're in a whirlwind situation still until they get their feet on the ground down there. So it's going to cut. If they get through those first 4, it's going to come down to the last 2. And Mac has complained about, oh, it's not fair. We got to go to Clemson State to close the season. I asked him about a month ago, I said, don't you think that's actually a positive? Because if you get through those first 10, just think about how huge and important and national going to Death Valley is, not just for the team, but for Drake. Mm-hmm. If they're 9-1, 10-0, and I'm just throwing that out there for the sake of discussion. I'm not saying that they will be, but if they are, Drake May has a chance to win the Heisman those last 2 games, because everybody that follows college football knows that going to NC State's not easy, especially when you're coming out of Clemson. So I think it's a great schedule. Mm-hmm. We have a chance to learn so much about where this program is 5 years in to Mac's era, where everybody on the roster, guys he brought in, it's his staff. It's all his direction, and there won't be a whole lot of wondering anymore. We'll know exactly where North Carolina football is because Drake will leave. You got to capitalize on having a guy like that here. They've had Sam and now Drake. You got to capitalize on that. So I think this season's important to capitalize as well.
South Carolina, North Carolina in Charlotte. AJ, I want to ask you this because a lot in Gamecock Nation are labeling this as the most important game of the season. I don't necessarily agree, but it's certainly a tone setter. Is that the same feeling on the UNC side?
There is no doubt about it. Because they can lose the game and still reach their goals. Staff will approach it that way. Media will somewhat look at it that way. Fans won't. They need to generate steam because I think that they're starting on a 4-game losing streak. That's all people talk about. Those last 4 games.
And you've got South Carolina with the way they finish. It's a tale of two kind of opposite finishes to 2022, to your point.
Yeah, there is. And there's also the memory of what South Carolina did to them in the bowl game a year and a half ago. And remember, Carolina was the 2015 was a really big year for Carolina. They won 11 straight games, but they opened up with South Carolina on Thursday night in Charlotte and screwed that one away. And so I don't think there's a lot of excitement about playing the Gamecocks these days because I don't think Carolina fans are that optimistic. I know they beat them in Mac's first game back. They got a couple touchdowns in the fourth quarter to win that game, but I think that fans are nervous about this game. And I think they're nervous not just about this game, but what it might mean for the rest of the season. So I believe it's a fork in the road game. And I'm not a big fan of overplaying the meaning of things in sports because there's so much time for recovery. But I think given the fact that they lost those last 4, I think given the fact that the fans are just kind of wait and see mode right now with a lot of pessimism, and they got 2 home games coming up after that, and they need full stadiums because those are both big games. I think it's vitally important they win that first game, especially if you want Drake to stay in the conversation. If they lose that first game and they don't score 30 points, Drake's done. And I think for this program, for what it's trying to do, it's important to have a guy in a Heisman race to get that discussion, to brand yourself a little bit more. So I think it's an extremely important game. I agree with you, by the way. I don't think it's the most important game for South Carolina. You got a lot of other big fish to fry that come up, and you can recover from that in your league. For North Carolina, it's a little harder to recover inside the ACC because it's not as good as the SEC. It's harder to change that narrative. South Carolina can lose to the Tar Heels and still change its narrative in league play. I don't think North Carolina would be able to do that unless it ran the table and won in Death Valley. And that would be – I wouldn't expect that to happen, especially if they lose the opener.
Now, AJ, you mentioned Drake May, and that's something I know we're also excited to see, the quarterback battle in that game. Spencer Rattler against Drake May. By the way, we know it's a night game in Charlotte, prime time. I mean, everything you could ask for. When I look at these two teams, you know, AJ, I feel like a lot of their question marks are very similar. I know that they finished 2022 a different way, but, you know, putting that behind us entering this season, both these teams have quarterbacks they feel really, really good about. Both of these teams have question marks on the line of scrimmage. And so both of these teams have new offensive coordinators. And so I feel like with those question marks, you know, I feel like it's so cliche to say, well, it just really comes down to which quarterback plays the best. But AJ, would you agree? This really just does to me. It feels like a game where it's like whichever quarterback makes fewer mistakes, that's more than likely the team that's going to come away a victor.
Could be, but I would say that South Carolina can win if Spencer Rattler's not great. I don't think North Carolina could win if Drake May's not great. So, and that's a lot of pressure on him. And until they show otherwise, that's sort of the way I'm going to look at a lot of these games, especially against App State and Minnesota and Pittsburgh. I think they could beat Syracuse and Virginia and some of those other teams without him being great. I think Duke will be pretty good. Throw Duke in that last year. I think Duke's going to be a good football team. There's a lot of good stuff going on in that program right now. But I do think in that opener, if Drake makes mistakes, if he throws a couple of picks, if he fumbles, and he's fumbled at times in the past, I don't know if they could survive that. He needs to be damn good. And you know, South Carolina didn't even have a quarterback 2 years ago and beat Carolina in the bowl game. He was once a quarterback, and the staff didn't prepare for any of that stuff, which is pretty awful. But I do think with North Carolina's run defense, Rattler, if he's solid and South Carolina can run the ball well, that's a pretty good recipe right there. I think Drake's going to have to go 350 or above.
Mm-hmm. Now, AJ, last thing before I get you out of here, by the way, appreciate you taking the time. You've been fantastic.
Sure.
You mentioned the outlook from the fan base, the pessimism, the sort of like waiting on the edge of their seats, right? Your outlook of this season opener in Charlotte, because objectively, I mean, it's got all the makings of a classic and truly one of the best games of the weekend. But the way you look at this game from both sides and just kind of what you're expecting in Charlotte, not asking for a prediction, but just the way the game plays out.
I just think it's a wonderful opportunity for both programs because they're on ABC. It's prime time. I hope both fan bases show up. I've been really disappointed in the 3 times that they've played in Charlotte, 2015, the opener in 19, and the bowl game, where neither fan base showed up. Yeah, neither fan base showed up. And I know that South Carolina's got a great fan base. I know that Williams-Brice is bigger than Keenan. They get a much better home crowd than North Carolina does. There is an appetite for football at North Carolina. And this is the kind of game where they have to show that, but they haven't in the past, which is really weird. I don't understand that. They can't make, I know that people were concerned a couple years ago about the heat and the sun, and there were some incidents in the stands where some people had some health issues. This is nighttime. Get the tailgate right down there. Charlotte does a great job of opening up the area around the stadium, allowing a free-flowing pregame party atmosphere. People should take advantage of that, go to the game. I want to see a full house. I want to see 35,000 on one side, 35,000 on the other side. Put on a great show on national TV because that will resonate. It would be embarrassing for both programs if ESPN and ABC does these stadium pans and there's swaths of empty seats in the upper deck. It's going to look bad for both programs. So I think they can help each other with a great crowd and then put on a good show. So that's the way I look at it. I'm not even anywhere close to making a prediction for this game. I think North Carolina's got a ways to go before I look at them as a team that's going to win this game. But I would imagine South Carolina, someone who covers South Carolina like you do, follows them closely, would probably feel the same way because we know the warts. When you get in our business, you know the warts of these teams so much. Sometimes it's hard to get over that. So I'll grind that out in about a month and a half or so. But right now, I just think it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for Shane Beamer to be on exclusive national TV and show his program and differentiate himself from his dad some. And I think for Mac, being the legend, the Hall of Famer, to show people he's still got it and his program is going upward, it's not plateaued or anything like that. I think it's wonderful for both programs. And they can both achieve that in the same night. They really can by putting on a show, win or lose. I think that they can both benefit in some respects from that. Maybe South Carolina a little bit more than North Carolina, because I do think there's more pressure on UNC to win this game and have a big year in Mac's 5th year because the people that are concerned about his age and other schools recruit against him and make a big point about his age, which I think is one of the reasons why he's lost the weight he has, because they can't talk about that anymore. So that's kind of the way I view it from what are we, 6 weeks out? About 6 weeks out, 7 weeks out.
AJ, last thing really quickly before I get you out of here. North Carolina is the favorite in the ball game. Does that surprise you?
No, because Drake. I mean, people know Rattler, but I think the national narrative on Spencer Rattler is more negative than positive. We know why. I don't have to explain why. I think the national narrative on Drake is pretty positive, but I also think that there's not a lot of believers because people, for some reason, are trying to compare him to Mitch Trubisky. Well, Mitch was pretty damn good, but Drake's a lot better. So that doesn't surprise me. That's for gambling, right? They just want people to fork out shekels on the Gamecocks. I don't follow lines that much. Sometimes I'm curious, but I don't follow them that much. And anybody that would this far out would pick one or the other team to win that game and put money on it. That's Russian roulette with money right there.
AJ, appreciate you taking the time. Let everybody know where they can find your work.
TarHeelIllustrated.com. We're in the Rivals Network. You can follow us on Twitter @Heel Illustrated. And if any UNC fans are checking this out, go to our Facebook page. Trey Scott's doing a lot of fun stuff there. And our YouTube channel is Tar Heel Illustrated. We are prolific putting out lots of different topics, videos talking about the Tar Heels football, basketball, and recruiting.
AJ, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Looking forward to it in Charlotte. We'll do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, that was AJ of Tar Heel Illustrated, our 2023 opponent preview series. Beginning with the North Carolina Tar Heels, going to be a damn good, fun one in Charlotte, North Carolina, in that season opener. Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, is set to join us here in the next minute or so. So no break. Normally we've done a break after those segments, but no break here because Mark Rogers is supposed to join us. Let me make sure. Yep, we sent the link over to Mark as we await him to jump into the show. So, anyways, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. And again, I hope you all enjoyed that. Really, really good stuff. And Jeff Gullish points out, wow, that's interesting. UNC may need to put up 300 plus yards on our secondary to win the game. I thought that was an interesting take too, Jeff. The fact that he believes that Drake May needs to throw for 350, I believe he said. 350 to win that ball game. I know South Carolina has issues in the secondary. We all do, but you'd like to think the Gamecocks could hold them under 350. You'd like to think so, right? I mean, you really would. You'd like to think so. Anyways, we'll see. Guys, like I said, Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, jumping on the show in the next couple of minutes. Really excited for tomorrow, guys. Greg Sankey will kick it off 11:30 Central, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. Then you have LSU, Texas A&M, and Missouri all taking the podium tomorrow. In case you are wondering, I got the full schedule right here. And this is, of course, in the main media room, which is what's broadcasted on SEC Network. Again, you got Greg Sankey, 12:35 to 1:20 Eastern. Then you got Brian Kelly, 1:30 to 2 Eastern. Jimbo Fisher, 2:45 to 3:15 Eastern. And then Eli Drinkwitz, 3:45 to 4:15 Eastern. So, it's going to be a packed day tomorrow, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to it. Really exciting. You know, I tell you this, and I mentioned this a couple of days ago. I'm excited for the coaches, excited for the players, all that good stuff. I'm really, really excited to meet a lot of the people that I've been fortunate enough to have on the show or go on their shows that I've never met in person. I'm really excited for that. I mean, you could look at it as like the biggest, baddest networking event somebody like yours truly could go to. That's kind of the way you can look at it. So I'm really pumped, really excited. And yeah, guys, it's a lot of fun. I mean, today was a bit of a long day. Had about a 6.5-hour drive or so to Nashville, Tennessee. But got up here around 4:30, got checked in, got the credentials, got registered, all that good stuff. Jeff Gullers, no, I have not ran into Jake yet. Trust me, you guys will know. You guys will know. So, Jeff, funny story, by the way. Jake is going to come on Friday as normal for TDC, which will be a lot of fun, right? Because he'll have full takes and reactions to everything all these coaches said. But you can bet, Jeff, that that we'll be making some content with Jake Crane and the Crane and Company boys, and even if it's just a quick 30-second selfie, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to do something. So, you know, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be, I really, Jeff, I'll tell you this. As we sit here and we wait on Mark Rogers, I'll say this. You know, this week it's exciting. It's one of those things, though, guys. I'm not going into it with my only expectation is that it's going to be a blast, because I know that's going to be the case. But I'm not going into the week with the expectations of like, oh, I've got to get this question in, or I got to ask this person this, or I need to do this many shows or do this. You know, I'm here to make content, obviously, and cover the event, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. But I'm also here to enjoy it, right? And so I'm really just trying to keep that at the forefront. Like, above all else, enjoy the heck out of the event, man. Just enjoy the heck out of it. You know what I mean? because I am a newbie. This is my first time. I don't know exactly what to expect. You know what I mean? Like, I've never been before. My goal, I'll tell you guys this, is I'm going to go to all of these coaches in the main media room, and I'm going to do my best to ask a question to every single coach. I think that's what I would like to do. I think that'd be awesome. I mean, obviously, guys, you all know I'm trying to spread the TSUS brand. I'm also trying to spread my personal brand as a content creator and someone in this space. So, what better way to do that than ask questions and get your name out there and state your name and state your affiliation and everything else. So, and also, I just love talking football. So why not talk to these guys? And, if I get asked to come on a show and do a spot, cool. If not, totally fine. It is what it is, right? So, going to be a lot of fun, though, either way. Going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait. Going to be a blast for sure. Guys, we are awaiting Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. I do not see him in here as of yet. Not sure where. Jeff Gullidge, Mark Ryan. Is that what? Mark Ryan will not be at SEC Media Days. Jeff Gullidge, Mark Ryan is actually going to be at ACC Media Days, which is next week, not this coming week, but next week in Charlotte, North Carolina. So there you go. But I will be jumping on offside to Mark Ryan tomorrow, which will be a lot of fun, obviously, breaking everything down from SEC Media Days and talking everything that went down the day that was, talking Shane Beamer, looking ahead to Thursday, all that good stuff. But I'm excited to be here all week, man. I just, I don't know. I thought about it, and I guess some people would have thought I would have just came for just Thursday. But nah, man, I'm excited to be here all week, man. I'm excited to be here all week. So I'm pumped to be here all week and hear from all the coaches. And again, man, just take in the event. You know what I mean? Like why not? Like why wouldn't I be here all week? It's a blast. So looking forward to it, man. Again, we've got Greg Sankey kicking us off, LSU, Texas A&M, and Missouri tomorrow. Speaking. Then you got Vandy, Georgia, Auburn, Mississippi State on Tuesday. You've got Bama, Arkansas, Florida, and Kentucky on Wednesday. And then finally on Thursday, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Tennessee. So again, guys, the one guarantee, it is going to be a fun week. And college football is just around the corner. On that note, he joins us every Monday, but he was gracious enough with his time to roll with the punches. When I called the audible, asking to jump on, he said yes. Very excited to have on Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, on the show. Mark, what's going on, my friend? Again, let me say this. Thank you so much for taking the time on what felt like some short notice. I know obviously it is a little bit later than usual, but I appreciate you being willing to jump on and talk some ball, man. What's going on?
Absolutely, Chris. Good to see you.
Absolutely. So, Mark, we get rolling, right? Tomorrow, SEC Media Days gets underway. Yours truly right now sitting in Nashville, Tennessee. Very, very excited to hear from all the coaches all week on the event. Let's talk about tomorrow specifically. Again, like I mentioned, Greg Sankey kicking us off, and then LSU, A&M, and Missouri. First with Sankey, anything in particular you're wanting to hear from him, whether it be officiating, Texas and Oklahoma with expansion, the 8-game versus 9-game scheduling? I think the interesting thing, Mark, with SEC Media Days is we talk about what do we want to learn, what do we want to hear, knowing, right, we know that you can't draw any hard conclusions, but I mean, what we do, we're trying to read in between the lines. So is there anything from Greg Sankey that you're going to be most intrigued or specifically listening for, hearing from him specifically tomorrow?
Well, like I told you last week, Chris, and we talked about, it is the address of any media day that I want to hear more than any other, typically, is what Greg Sankey has, because he has been very intentional about driving home his talking points, his policy initiatives. So if it goes to the 8 to 9 game schedule, I think he's shown his hand a little bit in regards to which way he wants to go. But I would like to hear a little bit more from him, because I do just think it's a internal struggle between certain schools that want 8 and some that want 9. The television partner, ESPN, I'm sure wants 9. And they obviously intentionally unveiled one season, just that limited season or two, to say this is where we are, and we'll address the rest of it going forward. So they didn't. The battle is still being waged, and I want to see if he's going to give us any indication as to where that could be headed in the future. Other than that, Texas, Oklahoma, he's only going to say everything positive about those additions. So it's more about the 8 to 9 games, and then maybe he hits us with something that we're not expecting, that's on his mind.
Mark, I think it's a really fun way to kick off SEC Media Days again with LSU, A&M, and Missouri, because the storylines with all three of those teams, obviously you have LSU, year 2 of Brian Kelly, and it feels like with a lot of these great coaches, year 2, you sort of ascend and take that next step. Well, they literally won the SEC West last year, so I'm not exactly sure how much farther they can go, I guess, unless they're going to take down Georgia and get to the playoff and maybe win it all. So hearing from Brian Kelly, of course, he bringing Jaden Daniels with him. Really excited for that. Also, Texas A&M, one of my questions, and, one of the things I'm really intrigued to hear, Mark, from Jimbo Fisher is just how he and Bobby Petrino, how that's going to work on the offensive side, getting Connor Wegman going, leading into a bounce-back season. Then, Mizzou is so interesting because they return all this experience, right? 80% on the defensive side. A lot of folks are high on them. But I feel like Eli Drinkwitz is the college football version of Jeff Fisher, where it's just like death taxes him going 500 every year. So, when you look at those three, LSU, Texas A&M, and Missouri, what stands out to you? What are you most excited to hear tomorrow from day one of SEC Media Days?
Well, I'm sure that Mizzou is the least interesting for just about everybody else. They schedule these day to day for a reason. If you look at the composition of teams each day, they sprinkle in the lesser teams with the big names, and they try to balance it out to keep the media involved. They sandwich Vandy in between, Bama and Tennessee or somebody.
Vandy's with Georgia this year. Vandy's with Georgia.
They force it down your throat. You're going to be here for Vandy. So they don't put if they put Vandy at the end of the week, last team of everybody's out of town. Everybody would skip town. So there's a strategy to that. What intrigues me about Missouri is because Eli Drinkwitz isn't performing. He's not outperforming Barry Odom. He seems to be skating by just fine. I don't know that there's a lot of heat on him. They haven't had a winning season since 2018, and that was Barry Odom. And so when is he going to correct things? He's a great interview. Sounds like he'd be a great guy to sit down and have a drink with and pass the time with. He's a funny guy, interesting guy, but he's just not coaching very well. So what do they have? Now, the two headliners are LSU and Texas A&M. Brian Kelly's going to say some things. I would be surprised if he doesn't say a few things that will be the headlines of SEC Media Days for Monday. Jimbo, Jimbo's an emotional guy. He's probably the most emotional coach in the conference, who, despite his age and experience and everything, should know better, doesn't necessarily put his guard up all the time. And if you can get him, if you can poke him the right way, then look out. Jimbo's going to ramble on for 20 minutes. You're not going to be able to understand about a third of it, but what we do understand is going to be entertaining. So Brian Kelly, Jimbo Fisher, I won't be surprised if something is stated that becomes, the line of the day, the statement of the day.
What's interesting too, you mentioned going back to Mizzou, Mark. I think what's really intriguing and just looking at SEC Media Days and just the landscape of the SEC going into this season, it feels like, the lay of the land right now. Georgia, Alabama, LSU, those are your clear-cut top upper echelon of the SEC. Vandy probably at the bottom. Then it's just kind of wide open. Maybe put Mississippi State down there as well, although I did see your predictions. You've got the Bulldogs 7-5 in this year, which I think will be a really good year for Zach Arnett in year one. But I'm just – it feels like, obviously it's talking season. And everybody's going to go up to the podium and sell their program and why everything they're doing is so great. And it's like, I think you and I have talked before, like somebody has to have a bad season. Like somebody's stock's going to go down, right? Like not everybody's stock can go up. Not everybody can win 8 or 9 games. And I don't know that we can learn that this week necessarily, but I really do feel one of the big question marks going into the season that we'll learn about, obviously, is who is that number 4 team in the SEC? Is it Tennessee? Is it A&M? Is it Kentucky? Is it South Carolina? Is it Arkansas? Is it like there's a lot of teams and a lot of teams that feel really good about themselves right now, and I'm sure they'll exude that at SEC Media Days. But I don't know. I just think it's really interesting, Mark, and it's funny because we're in prediction season as well, and you see a lot of fan bases, getting all up in arms on social media, and it's like you have to tell people, it's like, dude, not everybody is going to have a good season. Like somebody has to have a bad season. You know what I mean? So I just think that's fascinating, kind of the way, it shakes out, because right now, nobody's really on the major hot seat. I mean, there's Billy Napier talk. There's Jimbo pressure. There's, Eli Drinkwitz needs to win more than 6 probably, but like none where it was like Brian Harsin. But you and I both know it can just change just like that. And most likely this time next year, that won't be the case.
You're teaching some basic math to people, Chris, and you're filling a need there, because a lot of sports fans, a lot of college football fans need the basic math lesson. When the 2 teams walk off the field on Saturday, somebody won and somebody lost. So it all comes out to 500 if you add it all up. So somebody's got to be losing these games. So yeah, to your point, the 2 names and the 2 programs that come to mind when you start talking about, somebody's got to have a bad year. And there's really not too many bad teams in this conference. Mm-hmm. So, let's compare it to the other conferences. After Vandy, man, Missouri, Mississippi State, Auburn, they're really not that bad if they would go play somewhere else. But Auburn and Florida come to mind to me. And certainly Hugh Freeze, just it's a mulligan kind of season. It's season number 1 coming off the Brian Harsin debacle. And so he's of course safe and not much is expected. But I do think that Auburn can make some strides. Billy Napier recruiting well, but that's obviously not going to help him this year. And with the schedule, he just is going to hope that he's able to coach these 2024 recruits, because the Florida final record could be pretty ugly, but and I don't think they're that bad, but they're just up against it.
Tennessee football dealing with penalties handed down from the NCAA. Mark, your thoughts on the latest with them? No postseason ban, right? No bowl game ban, if you will. Scholarships taken away, wins revoked from, I believe, the 19 and 20 seasons or a couple of years ago. Jeremy Pruitt era, if you will. Thoughts on that, though? Did Tennessee get away with more than they should have? Was the NCAA too kind? A lot of rival fan bases feel like Tennessee should have been punished much more harshly. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, they should have been 200 plus violations. 200? Now, the thing that the NCAA, it's taken a long time for them to figure this out. Guys like us have been talking about this for seemingly decades. Punish the right people. And I know that's not easy to do, because typically the people to blame are gone. And typically they're not in college athletics right now. And if they are, hunt them down and go chase them down and make them pay the price where they are, is what I believe should happen. Because I think one of the most important components to the NCAA getting these situations right is determining how much did the coach, how much was he just flat out involved versus unaware, not involved. Obviously, in this case, Jeremy Pruitt involved, initiated it. That's about as bad as it gets. So you got to determine, okay, with a level of responsibility by the head coach, or not responsibility, just their flat out involvement. And obviously, again, yeah, he was the initiator of this. But secondly, how much did this permeate the institution? Is this an institutional issue, or is this just uh, a rogue coach and his coaching staff? Um, I don't know if they got that part of it right, because if it's just a coach and his rogue coaching staff that he hired, then punish them, try to leave the school. And I want the athletes that are not part of it. Now, I think the number was 16 athletes that they could pin down to being paid by Jeremy Pruitt. So it's my guess that it was more than 16. That's the 16 that they got. I gotta think that it was probably on the north end of 16. So I think the one thing that they've instituted for maybe the first time is this money exchange for bowl appearances, to say, hey, we don't want to punish the current players, so give me the estimated money that you would make in postseason play. So they're slowly correcting a few things to make these punishments, this discipline, more accurate, more fair to everyone involved.
Mark, I want to switch gears a little bit here, because I know you're someone that not only are you, obviously you're deep in the world of sports, but sports media specifically, in the media landscape and the way it's ever changing. What are your thoughts on these layoffs at ESPN? I mean, just some top tier talent that is now looking for employment, or maybe starting their own things, or like, what was your reaction to that? Because I know it took a lot of people by surprise. Obviously, ESPN looks like they're downsizing, maybe they're losing money, what have you. I'm not going to pretend to know all the details of it, but again, you're someone that's very well versed just in the space, and you've been in the space for a long time, and you worked for ESPN. So your thoughts on the downsizing at ESPN? Because again, it wasn't like it was layoffs of, well, I mean, I've heard of that guy once or twice. Like, we're talking the top names. Like, some of these I was stunned to see. Just your overall thoughts on it.
Well, yeah, I was there for 19 years, and it was about 10 years ago that the company was for all the issues I have with that company, and there are some, they were very transparent about, okay, this is a changing landscape. This is different in a number of ways, and we have to approach the business differently. So every 2 years, every 2 falls, we are assessing all of our personnel, assessing the number of people that we're throwing at different projects and everything, every department, and there are going to be layoffs. So that was happening there for the last several years that I was there, every other year. Now, here in the last 2 years or so, and I've been gone for almost 3, so I haven't kept that much track of it, although I know a lot of people that have been laid off, and have those conversations with a number of those people, that that they've been laying people off like every 4 to 6 months, like the last 2 years. They'll have a wave, and then 6 months later, they've another wave of layoffs. David Pollock was one that hit me. I'm a David Pollock guy. I like David Pollock. Think he does an exceptional job. And the talent layoffs have never made much sense to me. And I'm not saying that they don't make sense at all. We don't know what the numbers are. We don't know what they're earmarking for certain projects and certain shows that they have planned, and network initiatives going forward. So I can only judge that based on who that I think is doing a really good, exceptional job, versus some of the people at the network that I don't care for. But he's one of the outstanding ones in my book.
Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. Always appreciate you joining us, my friend. Looking forward to a fantastic week at SEC Media Days, and also chatting with you later this week, Thursday, after Shane Beamer, Spencer Rattler, Tonka Hemingway, Kai Kroger all take the podium and the dust settles. Looking forward to chatting, my friend. Going to be a blast. And again, thank you so much for rolling with the punches and doing this at a little bit of a different time this week. I truly do appreciate you.
Thanks for the invite. I apologize for being late, but you have a great time this week at Media Days.
I appreciate it, man. We'll talk later this week. Great stuff, guys, from Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. Always a pleasure. Hey, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, though, we'll get into our Q&A Power Hour here on this Sunday night, live from Nashville, Tennessee, SEC Media Days. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie Ho. Muscle Dougie Ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Sunday, July the 16th, 2023. Going to appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. We are rocking here on our Q&A Power Hour, taking your questions, your comments, your calls as well. I didn't even hook up the phone lines because I was so delirious and out of it. Give me just 1 second, guys. 843-790-3377. Do you think we'll have late night callers? I guess we won't know unless we hook this up. Look at me. See, when we're not in studio, sometimes these things happen. When we're not in studio, sometimes these things happen. The Q&A Power Hour would probably work a lot better if I had the phone line hooked up. Here we go. Let's see. Okay, we should be good to go. Let's see right here. Yep, okay. 843-790-3377 here on this Sunday night. Let's get into your questions. John Edwards says, I think Texas A&M is going to win 7 or 8 games. Okay. Will Croson says, I see A&M going 7-5. He also says if they lose a game early, they aren't supposed to, it's going to crumble like it did last year. So you think culture is still a major problem, Will, in College Station? You think culture, because their culture was abysmal last year. I mean, we all recall, what was it, the rumors they were smoking weed in the game, in the locker room pregame of the Carolina game? I mean, it's crazy, man. It's crazy the amount of things that happen during a college football season that you can't predict. Like, you can't predict players smoking weed in the locker room pregame. You can't do that. You can't predict that. Let's see. Babes and Waves, ask the SEC why next year we won't play Georgia, Tennessee, or Florida. It does suck. It's weird, man. Brian Dean, Chris, where do you see Texas and Oklahoma falling in at? I mean, Brian Dean, I think the top half of the league. Outside of that, it's tough to say, but I'd say top half. I think Oklahoma is going to get it back going. I think Brent Venables will get it going in Norman. And then, I mean, Texas, dude, I think Texas is a really good team this year. So, Brian Dean, Dak Joyner's 230 is going to be a hell of a running back. Yes, I did see that. Updated heights and weights for players. Dak Joyner's at 229. So, he's obviously preparing to be the bell cow back this year. We'll see. We shall see. Brian Dean, Gamecock Nation, are you ready for the sandstorm to invade Charlotte? It's going to happen for sure. Yeah, Charlotte's going to be painted garnet and black, man. John Edward asked the UNC preview in the podcast tomorrow. Yes. Yes. So all of these nighttime shows, all the podcast forms, everything will drop the morning after. The morning after. So 5 a.m. tomorrow. All our morning commuters out there. When you wake up, the podcast will be there. Jeff Gullich is Chris. What's up? Hope you have a blast at SEC Media Days. Jeff, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Truly grateful for you. Thank you. Todd Smith, appreciate you tuning in. Hunter Kelly says, I see Carolina going 12-0. I know you do, Hunter. I know you do, my guy. I know you do. I'd expect nothing less. Let's see. DGD says, what team aside from Carolina are you most interested to hear from? You know, DGD, it's tough to narrow it down to just one. I mean, I think everybody's excited to hear from Kirby. I mean, anytime you've won back-to-back national championships, but pairing it with some of the stuff going on off field, how could you not be excited to hear what he has to say? Yeah, it's a lot of different options. Let's turn to the whole line.
Dalton.
Dalton, what's going on, my man? How are you?
How's it going tonight?
I'm doing well, my friend. What's up? Yeah, I appreciate you calling in, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of wanted to call to ask you again, like, what sorts of things do you think we're going to learn at SEC Media Days that we don't already know? Because, I mean, most of the time you watch these coaches interviews and just
Dalton, you're chopping up on us a little bit. I don't know if it's me or you. It might be me, but service wise. But no, you were asking what are we going to learn this week at SEC Media Days, and I think you were making a good point that I think most of these coaches probably going to SEC Media Days looking to not make headlines. But there are certainly topics that I think there are things you're going to be able to read between the lines on. Kirby Smart talking about off-field issues. As I mentioned before, Jimbo Fisher talking Bobby Petrino in the offense. Zach Arnett at Mississippi State. I'm fascinated to hear about the transition from the late, great Mike Leach to everything they're doing now and how they're banding together and staying together and coming together to still have a good season, because I think they feel like they've got talent still on their football team. Obviously Shane Beamer talking about the offense and Spencer Rattler and Dowell Loggins and the run game and the run defense and the running back position and, all the question marks Carolina has. And then you look, all across the SEC, man, Billy Napier and, how has recruiting sort of changed his mood coming into SEC Media Days and the ascension of his program, and is his Media Days appearance kind of a lobbying for, hey, it's the process. We're headed in the right direction. Got to give it time. Will he be preaching patience? Nick Saban with the rat poison, people picking him 9-3, third in the East like me. I'm curious to hear what he has to say. So there's so many, man. I'd say this, all 14 teams have major storylines, and that's what makes it so much fun. And, I think some will be more outwardly or outspoken than others about certain things. And, I think some will keep things close to the vest, but that's sort of what makes it fun, man, is the unpredictability of SEC Media Days.
and then my next question, going back to
We're losing Dalton. Dalton, can you hear me? Dalton going once. I don't know if it's me or him, but the service is terrible. All right, we're going to try to get Dalton to call back in if possible. Going to see if we can get Dalton to call back in potentially. I don't know. Panic Ritter, you rock, Chris. If you see any single girls, send them my way. Panic Ritter, I can't help you out, my guy. Chase Floyd, third shift mod this week. It's tough. Here, let's get back on the phone line.
Call from.
Try it again. Dalton, what's up, man? Can you hear me? I cannot hear you at all. It may be me. I don't know. My service in Nashville might not be very good, so.
testing.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, there you
So
are.
we're good?
Yes, we're good now.
So yeah, what I was going to say is obviously Spencer Rattler is going to be at SEC Media Days this upcoming week, and my question to you is what kinds of things do you want to hear from Spencer Rattler that would make you feel better about sort of how he feels about the team moving forward, his ability to run the offense under a new OC. I mean, obviously we saw the Dowell Loggins press conference a couple months ago. And it seemed like he said a lot of the right stuff at that press conference. So I'm wondering, after working with Loggins for a couple months now, going into, fall practice, what sorts of things, do you want to hear from him?
Yeah, well, I think obviously Spencer Rattler speaking highly of Dowell Loggins, the system, the scheme in place, the simplicity of it, but also the the way they're going to be able to attack opposing defenses with the complexities maybe of some of the defense. Not saying that the offense is going to be complex, but it's going to be simple yet complex for an opposing defense to stop. I mean, anything and everything that Rattler can say positively about Dabble Loggins and the offensive scheme and everything is a plus. I'd love to hear Rattler.
Obviously,
yeah, go ahead.
What I was gonna say is I don't think he's gonna say anything negative. That's kind of the whole thing. During a press conference, you don't say anything really negative about the coaching staff. But again, you've already said you can sort of read between the lines. Do you think we're gonna get sort of a better understanding of how it's going behind the scenes in that sort of way, or do you think it's just going to be status quo where he just kind of says all the stuff that the coaches want him to say, and you just move on from there and see how it pans out?
I think a lot of it's going to be coach speak. I mean, I the way that I would hope Spencer Rattler is going to handle it is just very professional leader, handle his business, no nonsense type of deal. I don't see Spencer Rattler taking any shots or coming in there too confident or cocky, if you will. So, but what I was going to say is I would love to hear Spencer Rattler speak on the running back position, the running game, maybe how he's grown as a quarterback from last year to this year. Talk about that first year, and did anything surprise him maybe, or is there anything he's doing differently in regards to preparation, right? Jake Crane mentioned that. Is there anything he's doing differently because of what he learned in year one? Also, what he learned about himself in those last 2 games versus the first 10. Is it as simple as, and I mean, that's something I'd love to ask Beamer as well. I mean, I might very well do so. Is it something that, those final 3 games, is it as simple as an adjustment to the offensive scheme, philosophy, what play calling, what have you, or did Spencer Rattler just play better? I know we all think it was a reinvention of the wheel, and obviously there were adjustments made, right? I mean, there obviously were. I'm just saying, though, like, I wonder how Spencer Rattler feels, like what clicked for him to play so much better. Like, I'd like to know that from him. I'd like to hear that from him. Was it really as simple as he could play quicker and play more free and not think as much? Or did he just play better? Just flat out just play better. So, just hearing that, breaking that down, and, I think that's what I'd like to hear from Rattler. But I expect him, again, to be poised, be confident, be himself. And, I wouldn't expect any of South Carolina's guys to say anything truly over the top or anything. I'll tell you this. I think if anybody says anything that catches headlines, it's Beamer. I would not be totally stunned, after last year, the turn my swag on stuff, and then the Mark Stoops comments, and then beating Kentucky last year and pulling the glasses back out. I think Beamer's a guy that likes to have some fun, and it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't do more of the same later this week. All right. I think we lost Dalton there. I think we lost Dalton. So it was a great question, though. I appreciate you. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for it, man. It's so tough to predict what people are going to say. You know what I mean? It's hard to predict that. And I'm excited for, like, tomorrow night's show, Tuesday, Wednesday, because we'll actually have things that took place during the day to discuss. But, no, I'm pumped for it. Let's jump to the phones. Hunter, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm good, man. What about you?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you asking. What's up?
So I saw your prediction list on Twitter, and I just want to know why you think that we're going to lose to Mississippi State.
Hunter, that's the question that I've been getting nonstop since I dropped those predictions, and I'll tell you why. And I talked about this a couple weeks ago, but we'll continue the conversation. So, admittedly, Hunter, when I sit down and do the predictions, right, this is my process. I don't, there are some games where I'm kind of leaning one way or the other, but I don't have anything set in stone. And I just sort of sit down, look at the teams, and whatever comes to me, I go with my gut. And that's sort of the situation with this. So, North Carolina, I feel like South Carolina's going to get the dub. Furman's a dub. Georgia, I feel like, is a solid L. And then I got to the Mississippi State game. And that wasn't a game that I was expecting to pick Carolina to lose. But I felt like coming off the Georgia game, kind of a sneaky trap game, if you will. It's got noon kick written all over it. Carolina going to be beat up. Will Rogers still one of the best in the SEC. I'm not sold that Mississippi State's just going down the tank this year after Mike Leach's passing, if you will. So, and let me just put it to you this way. I mean, admittedly, Hunter, let me say this, admittedly, because South Carolina could very well beat Mississippi State. But I also think what's so interesting from people is for people to act as if South Carolina is not capable of losing that game. When we just lost to Missouri on the home field last year. I mean, that just happened. So South Carolina is capable of winning that game. They're also very capable of losing that game. And so admittedly, when you're picking a season, I mean, it's not all going to go chalk. It's not going to go all like you have to balance. And that's what I try to do with not just Carolina, but all my SEC picks. I mean, I'm not saying you just pick things to be like a hot take artist or pick things because, oh, let's just pick some nonsense. But like every year it happens, man. There are results that they don't make sense or they surprise us. There are surprising outcomes every year. And that game, let me just put it to you this way, though, Hunter, if you want football reasons. I've got South Carolina beating North Carolina. I don't think UNC has the athletes up front on the line of scrimmage to give Carolina fits, right? Enough fits to stop them to a point where they won't win the football game. I think Mississippi State is North Carolina with better line of scrimmage. They've got a really good quarterback who can throw it over the yard. And I think South Carolina has real problems on O-line and D-line. And I think that could be a game. I think that could be a game where, you know, if Carolina's not starting to get going on the lines of scrimmage, you know, this is still a team. They're going to be nasty on defense. And I know they lost a lot, but Mississippi State known for good defense. Will Rogers, one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. I'm not saying they're some great team. And I know, listen, picking a loss at Willie B is like blasphemy to people. I know that, but I mean, but I've got South Carolina later in the season beating Missouri on the road, which I think will be an upset at that time. I think Gamecocks are probably an underdog at Mizzou. Beating Kentucky at home, I think that's going to be a game that some disagree, but I think could be a pick 'em. Maybe even Kentucky could be favored. Like I've got South Carolina doing sort of their.
I think it's.
Go ahead.
I think it's great that we're underdogs on most of the games, anyways, because it seems like we play great when we're underdogs.
Beamer loves being the underdog, man. So I mean, you know, listen, I want South Carolina to take that next step as bad as anybody. Go 12-0, go 10-2, go 9-3, whatever. The thing that just concerns me is South Carolina has major question marks in the areas that you cannot afford to have question marks in the SEC, and that is the line of scrimmage, offensive line and defensive line. I mean, I'm not trying to over-exaggerate it. But when you have, you know, the offensive line could turn out to play really well this year. But when you have the type of question marks you have on those two spots, like that's, again, where the inconsistencies come in. And so a team like Mississippi State very well could beat you. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility. It's just not. At the same time, South Carolina could go on the road the following week and they could beat Tennessee like we saw it last year. I'm not picking it, but it could happen. It could. I mean, people.
Same thing with Notre Dame. We thought we were going to roll in and, you know, roll all over them. Look what happened to us.
Yeah. I mean, exactly, man. So it's, you know, predictions are just that. They're predictions. They're not fact. They're not, you know, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. I will say this. I'm not a big pat myself in the back guy with predictions because, you know, you get so many wrong. I feel like it's a waste of energy, but, you know, I picked 6-6, 3-5 in year one of Shane Beamer. Carolina went 6-6, 3-5. I picked 8-4, 4-4 in year two. Same thing. I'm trying to go 3 for 3. Okay. So 7-5 just feels right, Hunter. It just does. It feels right. If you want my honest opinion, it just does. So.
One more question.
Yeah.
So, do you think so? What do you think about Lenore Sellers and Spencer Rattler switching up in the game or something like that, where to carry on Joyner they like to switch up every in the game, like every now and then. Do you think that's going to happen this year?
I think there will absolutely be a package for Lenoris Sellers. I don't think he'll start by any means. I mean, I don't think that'll be necessary. But I think from everything we've heard, there will be a package for Lenoris Sellers. Now, how much he's used, I don't know. I can't say for certain. But they like his skill set a lot. You know, the updated weights came out today, and he's sitting at 245, which is, I mean, he's a grown man at 18 years old. So I mean, it's
that's pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, he's a dude that I think, you know, they're going to put the guys out there that can best help them win football games. And so if Lenoris Sellers is one of those guys, and especially you think to yourself, man, that if you're having troubles running the football, Lenoris Sellers is a guy that could come in, you know, do some special things in a special package and red zone packages and make some things happen. So I think they will absolutely use him. I think they'll absolutely use him. So.
Yeah, no, that's all I needed, man. I definitely appreciate it.
I appreciate the call, Hunter. Great stuff as always.
No problem, man.
Yeah, man, take care. Great stuff from Hunter. I'll just say this. Listen, is it 100% Carolina's going to lose to Mississippi State? No, it's not 100%. Nothing's 100%. But it's not 100%. But, like, to insinuate Carolina couldn't lose that game, or that it's like, you would think that I'm picking South Carolina to lose to Vandy. Which, you know, Carolina's going to, at some point, they're going to lose to Vandy. But nobody's going to want to be that guy that picks the loss to Vandy, right? Nobody's going to be that guy. Or want to be that guy, at least. 843-790-3377. Jeff says, like I said before, if you couldn't see us losing to Mississippi State, you haven't been a Gamecock fan long enough. It's a good point, Jeff. It's a good point. Let's see. Jeff Gullidge, do you think Beamer drops in the video this week like he did last year? You know, I don't know. I mean, last year I think that was a trend going down. So I don't know that he does. Maybe he does. I'm sure, Jeff, they'll do something. I don't know if it'll be to that level or what have you, but they'll do something. They'll do something. Austin Gregory, South Carolina will probably drop it. I'd probably say Thursday morning. That's what they did last year. It was Thursday morning. Robbie Davis in the comments. What's up, man? John Edward asked about the schedule, I believe. Yeah, the opponent preview and position at preview schedule. John Edward, I will get that to you because we're having to make an adjustment to it because I'm actually going out of town to Montana for a week. The week before game week, going to see some family. So we're going to bump the content up because while I'm in Montana, obviously will not be on my phone hardly at all. We won't be doing TDC. It'll be kind of one last hurrah, one last break, one last trip before we kick off and we're locked in for the rest of time. So anyways, guys, that's going to be a lot of fun. John, but I'll get you the schedule, though. I'll get you the schedule. So. Definitely excited to link up with the Crane and Company boys, man. Gonna be a blast. Gonna be a blast for sure. Looking forward to that. I was just saw them on on Twitter. Anyways, guys, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Panic Ritter says, highlight of the year was meeting Chris on the cruise. Panic Ritter. You're the man, man. That was funny. That was really funny, Panic Ritter. That was really like, what a small world it is. You know what I mean? What a small world. Brendan about to clock in. I'll see what all the hubbub is about in the AM. So, Brendan M., you're working right now, or are you going to sleep right now? I'm assuming he's going to sleep right now. I think that's what he's doing. I apologize, girl. I'm not even going to front. I'm tired. I'm very tired. A 6-hour drive. Woke up early this morning. I am, I don't know if we're going to make it to 10. I'll put it that way. I mean, it's already late anyways. It's what, 10, 11 on the East Coast. I say the East Coast like we're on the West Coast. We're Central time. So it's 9:11 here. John Everton, appreciate it. Chris helps me count down till game week. John Everett, I got you, my friend. I got you. I'm actually I'm updating the schedule to this week, and I will get you that schedule, John Everett. I promise. I got you, my guy. Robbie Davis, if we can go 8-4 this year, I would say our season is a good one. I would say so as well, Robbie. I would take that in a heartbeat. Austin, Gregory, everybody watching this just yawned. Thanks, Chris. Austin, I'm sorry, my guy. I'm sorry. I apologize. I couldn't. I'd held that yawn in for probably 30 minutes. Jeff Gullidge, how about this earlier? Watch the spring game for the first time today. Jeff, it's July the 16th, and you just watched the spring game. Anyways, he says, biggest takeaway is the whole season will come down to OC play calling and adjustments. If he fails, it's going to be a long season. Well, Jeff, you know, I don't think anybody wants to think of it as Dowell Loggins is going to fail. And I'll say this, Jeff. I'll tell you this, Jeff. I don't think there's any way Dowell Loggins could be worse. I just genuinely don't. I don't. I don't think there's any way that Dowell Loggins could be worse. There's just no way. So, you know, I think that it's a big season for Loggins for sure. And again, what's interesting is like, you know, new OC, you're like, okay, like Grace. No, they need to get it rolling immediately. Immediately. Let's see. Chase Floyd says, join the BCC so Chris can get a good night's sleep tonight. Yes, indeed. Patreon.com/Big Cock Club. There'll be a lot posted in there that this week for sure that I may not post on social media. So definitely join Patreon.com/Big Cock Club or click the link in bio on our social media channels. You'll see Big Cock Club there. Also, guys, let me say this. Thank y'all so much. Those who have gone to the revamped tsus.store and who have purchased their merchandise. The reception has been incredible. Thank you so much. We're getting these shipped out within this week, I would say. Starting to get orders shipped out. Very excited for you guys to see everything, all the enhancements, everyone who has placed orders, and make sure you do so. Beamer Ball, Beamer Rattler, Clem Suck, Shane Storm, everything you can think of. Also, guys, in the next 10 days or so, a little bit over a week, we are getting hats back on the store, specifically Beamer Ball, Beamer Rattler, and Clem Suck. So the merchandise will continue to expand, continue to grow. Really excited, guys. Thank you all so much, those who have went to the store and who have shown love and shown support. Austin Gregory, what are your dream games? Doesn't have to be SEC for me. Without Whiteout at Penn State tops the list, followed by a night game in Baton Rouge and the Michigan-Ohio State game in the Big House. Yeah, I'd go a night game at LSU for sure. I mean, those are really great selections, Austin. Whiteout at Penn State would be really cool. Dream games. I would actually love to go see Texas, Oklahoma at the Texas State Fair. I think that would be really cool. I'd love to experience This one might be a little bit overrated or surprising. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl in person. Just because I've heard how nasty of a rivalry that is. I'd love Michigan, Ohio State, but in the shoe. I'd like to go visit I'd love to visit the shoe and the big house as well, but I'd love to see Enter Sandman at Virginia Tech. Yeah, there's a lot, man. There's a lot. I would love to see every SEC stadium, you know? So. Austin Gregory, what do you want to be looking for in a Loggins offense? What are the things you'll be hoping to see from the first few drives? Well, I mean, I think from a Loggins offense, I mean, number one, Austin, I want to see vertical passing game. I don't want to see the swing pass game for sure. Finding ways to get the ball to our playmakers in space. You know, get the ball in the hands of the playmakers early and often down the field. Not having to rely on a swing pass, right? A free-flowing, simple yet effective offense, Austin. I mean, that's again, Austin, to your point, and I see you say for me it's situational awareness, excuse me. I mean, dude, I would agree, and I would say this. Here's the thing. The thing we don't know about Dowell Loggins right now, that we're not going to know until that ball kicks off on September the 2nd and the season begins, is in-game play calling. That instinct to know late in the ball game what needs to be dialed up. We don't know right now. There's no way of finding out. And Dowell Loggins has never done it at the collegiate level. OC in the NFL never called a play at the collegiate level. So we don't know. Because all these OCs, they script their first 15, 20 plays anyways. What happens when you got to go off script? What happens when you're late in the ball game, 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 4, whatever the situation is? And that instinct just kicks in. Situational play calling. Are you able to dial it up? That, to me, guys, is the greatest unknown of Dowell Loggins right now. Because I believe he and Shane Beamer. I do. I believe he and Shane Beamer when they say, we're going to simplify. We're going to make things easier for our players. We're going to let them play freely and let them go make plays. I believe them. I do. Situational play calling, though. In-game, once you go off script, play calling. Does he have that killer instinct? Does he have that knack for finding the right play call? Because it just seems like with a lot of these play callers, you either have it or you don't. And we're not going to find out whether he has it or does not until toe meets leather. That's just the reality. So that would probably be my number. My other question is this. I'll say this. Austin, I mentioned this when talking about the offense and our offense preview. And why I think you have to keep somewhat of why you have to keep realistic expectations for Dowell Loggins. Because I understand, I mean, there was a reason, guys, we wanted Satterfield fired. Right? There was a reason we wanted him fired. We knew he wasn't very good. The offense stunk. Right? We talked about it last year. It's like, I'm not a chef, but I know when food tastes like shit. I'm not an offensive coordinator, an offensive guru, but we all knew that offense was broken. It didn't look the way it was supposed to. My biggest thing is this. I think people have to remember it's also about Jimmy's and Joe's. Dowell Loggins is a football coach. He's not a miracle worker, right? So, I mean, it's if the offensive line's a problem, I don't know what you can expect from Dowell Loggins. I just don't. If Carolina's one-dimensional and they can't run the football, I mean, listen, it's his job to figure out what to do in those situations. I totally agree. But I also want to be fair. To that same point, though, I said this last year about Marcus Satterfield that, hey, if you know the offensive line, because what happened in 2021 was this, we thought the O-line was going to be a strength. And it was a surprise that it wasn't very good. Last year, I said, hey, you know the O-line might be a deficiency. That's not an excuse this year. Game plan around it. Scheme around it. And I understand why that's much easier said than done. I get that. But that's going to be the job of Dowell Loggins, finding a way to scheme around that. If the O-line is indeed a deficiency. Austin Gregory said, thoughts on Ziegler's commitment tomorrow? Seems we and UNC are neck and neck after UNC had a substantial lead about a month ago. Yeah, Austin, from what I've heard, he is a Tar Heel, but South Carolina has made a major, major push. We'll see what that means. 1 o'clock is when he will commit. Austin Gregory says, is it a bad idea to draw any conclusions in week 1, specifically in regards to offensive line of running back? Yeah, Austin, I think so. Yes. Point being, last year, South Carolina's offensive line in week 1 last year was not good at all. The offense was not good at all. And what they've shown under Shane Beamer, this team is going to get better from week 1 to week 13. Absolutely no question. So just because Spencer Rattler's off week 1 or the running game or the offensive line, as much as we want to draw conclusions, I don't know that you can say it's a week-to-week game. Like, there's no team in college football who more exemplifies the simple fact that college football is a week-to-week game. You cannot draw conclusions after a single game in college football. The greatest example of this is last year when South Carolina loses 38-6 to Florida and then turns around 7 days later and beats Tennessee 63-38. I mean, guys, here's the reality about college football. People get up in arms about predictions and, oh, my God, you picked what? You picked this. You can't predict the season crazy enough for what will undoubtedly unfold every fall. You know it because college football is insane. Since when does college football make any sense? Spoiler, it doesn't. It doesn't ever. It never makes any sense. You can't predict it outrageously enough because it makes no sense. And that's why we love it. Luke RJ says, Chris is a true media guy now. Goodness gracious. Big J. He says, can't wait to see TSUS on the SEC network this week. There's a chance that might happen, Luke RJ. I will be in my professional attire. We got the button up, ready to go. Oh, yeah, we're going to be playing the part, guys. Looking good, looking snazzy. And like I said, I'm excited not just to talk to the coaches and the players and what have you, but like I'm really pumped to meet a lot of the people that I have been fortunate enough to have on my show, to be on their show, to conversate with, to chat with. Going to be very cool. Oh, man. Going to be very cool. Sorry. Jeff Gullidge, he says, Chris, you got the outfit picked out. the outfit picked out for tomorrow. What are you rocking? I don't have it. I think I'll tell you this, Jeff. I'm going back and forth between two fits. It's going to be slacks and like a nice button up. No hat. And probably brown dress shoes either way. So I'm either going, listen, Jeff, I'm either going gray slacks, white with blue pattern button up, brown belt, brown shoes, or going with green, like I would say, green, olive green, I think. Yeah, olive green chino pants, like dress pants, basically, with a white button up, brown belt, brown shoes. So we're gonna look snazzy either way, Jeff. I might go. I think I'm gonna probably go gray tomorrow, though. I'm gonna try to start off the weekend style. So Chase Floyd says slacks, button up, and the Fire Bus Champ bandana for the win. Why not? Why not, guys? Why not? Why not? I would love it. Why not? Austin Gregory, any word on Mike Leach tributes for SEC Media Days? No word, Austin. I haven't seen anything, but I tell you this, I would expect most certainly Greg Sankey to say something, and I think every SEC coach will say something, and will probably share a memory of Mike Leach and what he meant to them and how he changed the game of college football and the game of football in general, and memories from, coaching with him, being around him, facing off against him, whatever. So, I think well-deserved too. I think Mike Leach gets tributes from – I think he should get tributes from everybody, and I think he will. I think every coach will take time to speak on Mike Leach. So Jeff Gullidge, I'm working on that plan to go to every SEC stadium. Been to 3 so far. Yeah, I would like to do that as well. I've been to, obviously, Carolina. I've been to Georgia, Athens. I've seen the Swamp. I haven't gone to a game, so I don't think that really counts. South Carolina, Georgia. I've been to LSU, but it was COVID. So, I mean, I don't know. So those 3, I guess, is it. I am going to stop by Vandy Stadium at some point this week. You guys know I love stadiums, so I am going to stop by and check out Vandy Stadium. Yeah, for sure. Anyways, guys, South Carolina's media guide is out as well. Yeah. Really cool stuff. Really excited too. Again, we'll get the day just in case you guys want the itinerary for tomorrow. If you are wondering what the breakdown of the day is, okay? So, the day will get going at 11:35 Central, 12:35 Eastern. Okay? Greg Sankey will speak from 12:35 to 1:20. So he's going to speak for a while, actually. 12:35 to 1:20. Then after that, Brian Kelly of LSU will go 1:30 to 2 o'clock. This is all just main media room stuff, by the way. Then after that, Jimbo Fisher will go 2:45 to 3:15. Finally, Eli Drinkwitz will go 3:45 to 4:15. Yes, 3:45 to 4:15. Yeah, those are all Eastern time. What I just read to you. So, there you go. Yep, that is the itinerary. All the coaches. We got the SEC Media Days kickoff booklet here. Really cool stuff. This is really awesome. Mm-hmm. Anyways, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Let's see. Jeff Gullich says, I've been to A&M, Missouri, and Arkansas. Very good, Jeff. Nice. Very good. Guys, we're going to go ahead and put a pin in it. It is 9:30 Central, but I know it's 10:30 Eastern, and I'll be honest with you, I am beat. So we're going to go ahead, put a pin in this thing. I'm sure tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to have a lot more in this Q&A. A lot more in the Q&A because we'll have things to talk about from what coaches said. So, going to be a great time. Looking forward to it, guys. Of course, content will be bleeding out of the eyeballs all week. Do not forget the podcasts Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are dropping at 5 a.m. Eastern. And then Friday, we'll get back to normal in the studio, noon to 3 Eastern. Podcast dropping at 5 in the afternoon. But everything you heard tonight, the podcast version of this will drop in the morning, 5 a.m. Eastern, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. And make sure, guys, you are subscribed. Also, click the subscribe button on YouTube, the bell icon, so you get notifications of when the podcast drops. Other than that, guys, hey, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your Sunday night, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.